This is the GH600 gimbal head from MOVO. It features carbon fiber tubing, metal knobs, and hardware, and as you can tell, it has no cradle swing arm, which makes it even more light and compact. Gimbal heads are popular for bird and wildlife photographers because they allow complete freedom to do the panning and tilting without affecting the leveling, and they're lighter and more nimble than video fluid heads for photography. These days there are surprisingly a lot of options out there for gimbal heads, even though it's catering to one of the more niche genres of photography. What makes the MOVO GH600 unique and stand out amongst the crowd is the fact that it features carbon fiber tubing, it's lighter weight coming at 2.75 pounds, it doesn't use a swing arm, which can sometimes interfere with handling and other equipment, plus it's one of the most inexpensive options out there. First things first, it wouldn't be a very helpful piece of gear if it didn't balance my camera gear, so to that, I can say that it will balance my Sony Alpha camera with the 200-600 lens. I also have the battery grip, and I've used it with the 1.4x and 2x teleconverter as well. MOVO claims that the gimbal can handle up to 33 pounds, but first of all, none of your lenses are ever going to weigh that much, and second of all, my video camera with the FS5 and Shogun recorder and the video batteries and the rod system, not to mention the Cartoni tripod and the 100mm fluid head, that all weighs up to around 26 pounds, and there's just absolutely no way that I can imagine locking that onto this gimbal arm. So if you have similar gear as me, as far as the camera equipment, I think you're good to go, but I wouldn't trust that 33 pounds. One thing I appreciate is that the pan and tilt locking knobs are both on the same side for faster adjustment. You would think that this is a given, but there are gimbals out there like the ones from Jobu Design that has one on one side and the other over on the other side. So it can happen, and I'm happy that they're on the same side here. Now, when I used to own the Wimberley gimbal head for my Canon gear, I liked having it on the left side of my lens. That way my right hand could be on the camera grip ready to move while the left hand could start working on the locking knobs, and that was the fastest way for me to work with that setup. With the GH600, I found that having the gimbal on the right side, it was nice because it gives me complete open access to the lens controls with my left hand because there's no gimbal arm or cradle or lens foot to get in the way. I do find it to be slower working this way, but the total access is great. Now, talking more about the metal pan and tilt locking knobs, I like the idea of them in that they can take some abuse while throwing the tripod around without worrying about the rubber cracking or slipping over time. And that's in theory, but in practice and handling them, I think I still would prefer a rubber variation. Granted, they are of good quality. I don't like the circular design, and it feels like I have to put more effort into locking and unlocking than if they had a rounded star shape, which offers your fingers more leverage. And speaking of leverage, another problem I have with the GH600 is that there's no hole at the base in which I can put a hex key in and tighten it down. Using the pan lock and twisting on until the lock gives doesn't feel like it's going on as tight as it should. Another issue that might pop up depending on your equipment is that MOVO was thoughtful enough to include a long 120mm archetype quick release plate that can be attached to your lens foot. However, the plate only comes with a single 1/4" screw, so if you own heavier telephoto lenses, then you'll probably need to source a locking pin adapter or a second screw to prevent twisting. I use a Kirk replacement foot on my 200-600, which has the Arca style dovetail built in, and it fits great onto the GH600. If you already own an Arca style plate for your lens that you like, it should work just fine. To me, the biggest downside for this gimbal head is that there's no real tension control for the pan and tilt. It's basically either fully locked or fully unlocked. Having some resistance in the pan and tilt can be very important as it helps dampen natural handshake while holding onto your camera, yet you're still able to move the camera around freely. The GH600 unfortunately requires locking down for any real stability and then needing to unlock again to adjust the framing. Even when you're panning around to capture birds in flight, having some level of resistance is also a huge help in keeping the right pace and reducing vibrations. One extra thing to note about gimbal heads in general is that having a leveling base is not required, but it does speed up setup for leveling as you don't have to mess around with the tripod legs in order to compensate for uneven ground. Overall, the MOVO GH600 comes in at a great price, especially for the materials, and it's lightweight and simple to use. Depending on how you work, the downsides might not be all that significant to you, but I do wish that it had some middle ground between the locked and unlocked state, and that the metal knobs were a different shape and perhaps rubberized. Hopefully this review was helpful to you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.